The check cleared on a Tuesday. $1,847.23. The same amount it had been for 8 years, drawn from the same account, sent to the same lender, on the same day of every month. I know because I kept every single confirmation number in a spreadsheet with the tab I labeled simply, "The House." I was sitting at my desk when my mother called to tell me they'd changed the will. She didn't call it that. She called it making things fair. Welcome back to Family Revenge Stories New, the channel where quiet people keep the receipts, and family learns that boundaries have a price. If stories about dignity, documents, and methodical consequences are your thing, drop a comment and subscribe. This one is going to take a minute. Stay with me. I'm a forensic accountant. I've been one for 11 years. Before that, I was a bookkeeper, and before that, I was the kid who balanced her own allowance ledger and noticed when the numbers didn't match the story. My mother always said I was too precise for my own good. She meant it as a gentle criticism, the kind that sounds like a compliment but lands like a diagnosis. Too precise. As if caring about accuracy were a character flaw, rather than a professional credential. As if the ability to follow a money trail were something to apologize for at family dinners. What she didn't understand, what I don't think she ever fully understood, is that precision isn't a personality. It's a lens. And once you've developed it, you cannot stop seeing through it. You look at a grocery receipt and you notice the rounding error. You look at a relationship and you see the cash flow. You look at your family and you see very clearly who has been the account that everyone draws from and who has been the account that no one deposits into. I'd been watching that particular imbalance my entire life. I just didn't have a name for it yet. My parents, I'll call them Margaret and Gerald, bought their house in 1989. A 3-bedroom ranch in a suburb that was nice in the 90s and is merely adequate now. They raised me and my younger brother Derek there. Derek is 4 years younger than me and has, for as long as I can remember, operated under a separate set of rules. Not because my parents were cruel. They weren't cruel. They were the kind of people who love their children unevenly without ever once noticing they're doing it, and who would be genuinely wounded if you pointed it out. I was the one who showed up. That's the only way I know how to say it. When my father had his first cardiac event in 2012, I was in the waiting room within 3 hours. When my mother's hip replacement went sideways in 2015 and she needed 6 weeks of daily help, I took FMLA leave and made it work. When Derek was supposed to come for Christmas in 2017 and called 2 days before to say he couldn't make it, I covered the silence at the table with conversation and cleared the extra place setting without saying a word about it. I was the one who showed up. And for a long time I told myself that was enough. That love doesn't keep score. That family isn't a transaction. I was a forensic accountant. I should have known better. The mortgage situation started in 2015. My father's second cardiac event, more serious than the first, left him unable to work for nearly 8 months. My mother's part-time hours at the church office covered utilities and groceries barely. The mortgage, $1,847.23 a month, was going to go unpaid starting in November of that year. My father called me, not Derek. My father always called me. I said yes. Of course I said yes. I set up automatic payments from my checking account and told myself it was temporary, 6 months, maybe 8. I made a note of it in my records the way I make notes of everything. Not because I was planning anything. Just because I am a forensic accountant, and I do not exist in the absence of documentation. It is the only way I know how to inhabit the world. 6 months became 12. 12 became 24. My father returned to part-time work but never full-time, and the mortgage payment never returned to them. There was always a reason. A prescription cost. A car repair. Derek's situation. Derek was always in some kind of situation. In 2018, when I gently raised the subject of transitioning the payments back to them, my mother said, "We're barely keeping our heads above water, sweetheart. You understand." I did understand. That was the problem. 96 payments. $177,333.08. That is what 8 years of understanding looked like in concrete numbers on a spreadsheet I kept without knowing why I was keeping it. I know now. My father died on a March morning in 2023. Not unexpectedly. He'd been declining for 2 years. But deaths are never actually expected, even when you've seen them coming. I was with him. I held his hand. I drove home afterward and sat in my car in my driveway for 45 minutes before I could go inside. I didn't cry in front of my mother. I never cry in front of my mother. She takes other people's tears as a resource she can redirect toward her own grief. And I'd learned to protect mine. The funeral was the following Saturday. I handled the arrangements. Derek flew in from Phoenix 2 days before and left the morning after the burial, citing a work commitment that seemed, to my forensic eye, flexible at best. 3 weeks after my father's death, Margaret called me to talk about the will. "Your father and I updated it last year," she said. "We wanted you to know." I asked her what had changed. "We've left the house to Derek," she said. "And the savings account just made more sense. He doesn't have the same kind of stability you do, and we wanted to make sure he'd be taken care of." I was holding a pen while she said this. I set it down on my desk very carefully, parallel to the edge of the notepad. "What about the mortgage?" I asked. "What do you mean?" "The mortgage payments. The ones I've been making for 8 years. There was a pause. A specific kind of pause, the kind that happens when someone has been caught without a prepared answer. "Well," my mother said, "we always assumed you were doing that as a gift." I opened my laptop. I pulled up the spreadsheet. I looked at the number in the total cell, $177,333.08, and I did not say anything about it. "I see," I said. "You understand, don't you? Derek needs more support. He always has." I told her I understood. I thanked her for letting me know. I got off the phone and I screenshotted that conversation's text follow-up 3 minutes later when she sent a message that said, "I know this isn't easy, but your father would want us all to be at peace with it. Love you." I saved the screenshot in a folder I labeled Margaret, March 2023. Then I opened a new tab and searched for estate attorneys in my area. My appointment with the estate attorney, I'll call her Claire, was on a Thursday afternoon 11 days after my mother's phone call. I brought the spreadsheet. I brought 47 months of bank statements. I brought the automatic payment confirmations going back to November 2015. I brought the original mortgage documents I'd requested from the lender that week, along with a payment history that listed, next to every single monthly entry, the source account. My account. Claire looked at the stack of documents and then she looked at me. "Do you have anything in writing?" she asked. "Any agreement about how these payments were characterized?" "No written agreement," I said. "But I have texts." Texts are, in my professional opinion, some of the most honest documents in existence. People send them quickly, without thinking, in the middle of emotional moments when their defenses are down. They are a paper trail that people create without meaning to. I had 31 texts from my father and 14 from my mother, sent over the course of 8 years, that collectively told a very clear story. My father, in October of 2016. "Honey, we don't know what we'd do without you covering the house. We will pay you back when things stabilize." My mother, in February of 2019. "You are an angel for doing this. Derek says to say thank you too." My father, in July of 2021. "I want you to know we see what you're doing and it's a loan, not a gift. We know that." A loan, not a gift. In writing. From my father. Claire was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "There's something else you should know." She pulled a folder across the desk. My father, she explained, had seen his own attorney in September of 2022, 6 months before he died. Not the same attorney who'd drawn up the joint will with my mother. A different one, a solo practitioner 2 towns over, whose name I didn't recognize. My father had drafted a codicil, an amendment to the will. It was dated September 14, 2022, witnessed and notarized, and it stated, in language that was not poetic but was absolutely unambiguous, that the mortgage payments made by his daughter on behalf of the family home between November 2015 and the date of his death were to be treated as a loan to the estate, repayable from the estate's assets prior to any distribution, and that if those assets were insufficient, a lien was to be placed on the property itself. He had filed it with the county probate court 11 days after signing it. He had not told my mother. He had not told Derek. He had not told me. I read it 3 times sitting in Claire's office. Then I turned to the second document she'd placed in the folder. A letter. Handwritten, not typed, on 3 pages of lined notebook paper in my father's careful, slightly cramped handwriting. Claire told me I didn't have to read it there. I told her I wanted to. My father had written it, he said, because he knew what my mother would do when he was gone. He knew her, he wrote, better than she knew herself, and what he knew was that she loved Derek's need more than she loved my competence, because need is louder and competence is quiet, and Margaret had always been someone who moved toward whatever was making the most noise. He was not asking me to forgive her. He was not asking me to stay angry. He was asking me to understand that he had seen me. He underlined those 2 words, and that he wanted the record to reflect it. The last line of the letter was this: "You counted everything, sweetheart. That was never a flaw. Make them count it too." I folded the letter. I put it in my bag. I looked at Claire and told her to file everything. The family found out in pieces. Derek called me first, 3 days after Claire sent the formal notice to the estate. He was not angry, not yet. He was confused, which in Derek has always been a precursor to angry, a brief interlude of genuine bewilderment before the entitlement arrives. "What is this letter from an attorney?" he said. "It's a claim against the estate," I told him. "Dad filed a codicil. You'll want to get your own attorney." "My own? What are you talking about? The house is mine." Mom said. "What Mom said and what Dad filed are 2 separate things," I told him. I'd start reading. He went quiet. Then, "This is family money. This has always been family money." I wrote that down. Not metaphorically. I picked up a pen and I wrote the exact words on the notepad in front of me. Family money. Then I set the pen down parallel to the edge, the way I'd learned to do when I needed to stay calm. "The mortgage lender didn't think so," I said. "They cashed my checks." He hung up. My mother called an hour later. This conversation was longer and louder, though I was neither of those things. She used the word selfish 4 times. She used the phrase, "Your father would be devastated," twice. She said that Derek needed this more than I did, that I had a good job and a stable life, that I was punishing them for loving Derek. I let her finish. Then I asked her one question. "Mom, do you know what date I made the first mortgage payment?" She didn't answer. "November 3rd, 2015, I said. "A Monday. Dad called me on the last Friday of October. I had the first payment in the account by Sunday and set up the auto transfer that night. Do you remember that weekend?" Silence. "Derek was in town that weekend," I said. "He came for Halloween. He left Sunday morning. He was there when Dad made the call." The silence on her end was a different kind of silence than the one before. I told her I'd see her at the estate meeting and I said good night. If you've ever been the one who picked up the phone and then picked up the tab and then picked up the pieces, while someone else flew in for the holidays and left before the dishes were done, you already know exactly where this is going. Stay with me. We're not done yet. The estate meeting was my mother's idea, technically. She'd called it a family conversation. She'd asked Derek to fly back in from Phoenix. She'd enlisted my Aunt Patricia, my father's sister, which is its own irony, and a family friend named Howard who'd known my parents since the 80s and who seemed to believe his presence would lend the gathering a certain moral authority. I accepted the invitation. I confirmed the date and time by email, which I then saved. I arrived 7 minutes early with a manila folder and a laptop bag. I sat down at my mother's dining room table, the same table where I had eaten 25 years of holiday dinners, where I had helped my mother address Christmas cards, where I had sat with my father on his good days in the last 2 years of his life and watched him drink his decaf coffee and not say the things he would later write down. My mother had arranged the seating so that I was on one side and everyone else was on the other. This was not subtle, but I've noticed that people who rely on emotional pressure rarely bother with subtlety. Subtlety is for people who think the other person might be paying attention. I was paying attention. I am always paying attention. Derek spoke first. He prepared, which surprised me. Derek rarely prepares. He talked about family legacy and what their parents had intended and how Dad had always said the house should stay in the family, which was true in the most technically accurate and contextually dishonest way possible. Howard nodded. Patricia looked at the table. My mother sat with her hands folded and watched me. Then Derek said the thing that had been building under the surface of everything. We think you should withdraw the claim. It's not what Dad would have wanted. I opened my folder. Can I have a few minutes? I said. My mother nodded like she was granting a concession. I placed the first document on the table, the codicil certified copy, filed with the county probate court on September 25, 2022. This is what Dad wanted, I said. He had it notarized. He filed it himself. He didn't tell anyone. He did it in September, 9 months before he died, which was enough time to change his mind if he'd wanted to. Derek started to speak. I continued. I placed the second document on the table. 47 months of bank statements, highlighted in yellow, every mortgage payment circled in sequence. November 2015 through February 2023, I said. 96 payments. $1,847.23 each. Total. $177,333.08. The lender has confirmed the payment history. The source account is mine. Every single month. I placed the third document on the table. The text thread, printed and annotated. July 14, 2021, I said, and I didn't read from it, I recited it, because I had read it enough times to know it by memory. I want you to know we see what you're doing and it's a loan, not a gift, we know that. That's Dad. That's his number. That's his name in my contact list. Howard shifted in his chair. This isn't about what I need versus what Derek needs, I said. It's about what was filed, what was signed, and what was sent. Those are the only things that matter now. The spreadsheet with the tab labeled "The House" still exists on my laptop. I haven't deleted it. I don't know if I will. Some documents are worth keeping not because you'll ever use them again but because they are the record. The proof that something happened, that it was real, that the numbers matched the story even when the story was hard to read. My father's letter lives in a fireproof box in my home office. I've read it 8 times. The last line is the one I come back to. Make them count it too. They counted it. With the money I received, I set up a small scholarship fund at the community college I attended before I transferred to finish my accounting degree. It covers 1 student per year. A first-generation college student, preference given to students with financial hardship. The scholarship is named after my father. It uses his full name. I don't think of it as irony. I think of it as the right thing to do with money that was always meant to build something. That's what my father would have said if I'd asked him. And he would have said it carefully, in that way he had, with his coffee cup in both hands and his eyes on the middle distance. And then he would have looked at me and smiled in a way that meant he didn't need to add anything else. I miss him the same way I missed him while he was still alive, specifically, in precise increments, in the particular shapes of the particular moments he should have been in and wasn't. That is grief, I think, when you are someone who lives by measurement. Not a wave. A ledger. What was here? What is missing? The permanent gap between them. Calm is not the same thing as weak. My family confused the two for 38 years. The difference in the end was $177,333.08 and a filing date of September 25, 2022. My father knew the difference. He always did. He just waited until he had the right document to prove it. If this story reminded you that the person who shows up quietly every single month without making a scene, without sending a bill, without asking for recognition, that person is not invisible even when everyone acts like they are. Take that with you today. Some people keep the receipts. Some people keep the records. Some people sit at the table with a folder and a calm voice and let the documents do the talking. If you're one of those people, or if you love one, this channel is for you. Drop a comment. Hit subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one.